Welcome back to DJ Coffee Talk. Today we sit down and share a cup of coffee with Alex Bochel, who is a musician and candle creator from Washington, D.C.
How did we feel about our interview with Alex Bochel?
I try to go to interview with everybody with like an open mind, but I was like very shocked talking to Alex when he told us about his story.
A lot and a little.
Yeah.
We go into things, we can only do so much research to see something about someone's life because contrary to popular belief, not everyone puts every detail of their life on social media and every interest. Yeah, no, you wish though. But we didn't see it. I mean, some of the preliminary research with Alex, we didn't see everything.
Yeah.
And how much depth to his personality that he had, and such a genuine, interesting human he was to talk to, you know? Yeah.
All the way down to like what he studied in college. Like he was a computer scientist and just decided to make an entire like redirection and recalibration in his life.
Off of the feelings the music gave him was so motivating, or made him feel so connected to himself, that he redirected his life to focus on music production.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because computer science is a really cush degree, in my opinion, in a lot of ways.
He goes from such a directed path, like taking a leap into essentially nothingness. At the time he made the decision, like he had a little bit of background in music, but not much. He was just like, I don't want to live my life inauthentically. And just going off of that feeling, decided to start building his life off of things that felt right to him. And it's like looking at it as a picture from the outside, which is the only thing we can do before talking to him. He's like, here's this guy that makes, you know, this interesting EDM music, and he makes candles, he likes cats, and it's just like these
buy this man a beer.
Amalgamation? Is that?
Amalgamation
of a bunch of like just random things. But it's really cool. Throughout the conversation, we kind of see how Alex pieced those things together after saying, fuck it, essentially.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people did that recently too, you know, with the pandemic and everything going on. It made people reflect on their lives in a lot of ways. It's interesting he took that dive pre-pandemic too.
Yeah.
But I think in a lot of ways people in the last year have had to reflect on how they direct their lives, how they live their lives, the values of their lives, the vision that's directing their lives. That kind of is how we got into this in the first place, you know, starting the podcast. We started this podcast last year, right at the intense, you know, beginning of the pandemic. I don't know about you. I was feeling like I was living inauthentic in quite a few ways. I wasn't feeling like there were many logs on my fire burning to make me feel excited in the morning. And we talked about doing this for a while, and we said, fuck it, let's go for it. Yeah. And it makes you wonder, like, how many people are out there. And I mean, we're still in this group. Like, I think everybody has those things on their mind that they want to do, but there's X, Y, Z things that we place in our own ways for reasons why we don't do X, Y, and Z, when it could be as simple as, let's start it today, you know? That's what we did with the podcast. That's what Alex did. He moved into his car, and he's like, I'm going to make music. I'm going to produce. I'm going to make candles. Just does it, you know? We overcomplicate things as humans. Yeah. I'm going to botch the quote.
Botch away.
Yes. But the difference between one day and day one is like a mindset shift. Or it's like it's a decision.
I think a really cool part about Alex's story is how he's able to grow his community.
By how much?
By 5,000%.
Get out of town.
No, it's impressive. 5,000% in 2020, and is that the viewer base? Is that how you found that?
I found that off of an Instagram post.
Yeah.
No, wait, no. I got off his website.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd boast about that shit if I grew 5,000%.
Yeah, it was on his website.
In 2020.
Well, you mean the activity was through the roof? He was creating way more music.
Yeah.
He had a year where he just was more getting in his stride, you know, and just really coming out more as an artist, which was awesome to see.
What's his community called?
AB Fam.
AB Fam. Which one of the AB Fam made the logo for Alex Bochel.
Yeah.
It's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. One of his like longtime viewers.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
The song that we're going to preview today is called Orno. It's one of Alex's more popular hits. really showcases his ability to produce. Sorry, I really just love the track. It's solid, but it's also what he did his coffee break centered around. He needed something new. He's the first person on DJ Coffee Talk. Alarm sounds going off. That that did kind of a breakdown, his tutorial. He opened up his DAW, his system, and showed us literally not only how he made the track and some of the elements in the track, why those elements are important, and kind of just the overall feel and what he was feeling when he made the track. It's a really cool video. I'm excited for us to share it with you guys, and I'm really happy that Alex took the chance instead of just which mixes are great, don't get me wrong, but tried something different and did something kind of creative for the coffee break. Here's a clip from Orono, written and produced by Alex Bochel, with lyrics featuring Anna Luther. Don't go too far because we jump right into conversation with Alex right after the clip.
I know our light has gone out. The winter froze us with doubt. Always wondered if you made your way back south, or if I'm still the girl you write about.
Enjoy the show.
Enjoy the show.
Yeah. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the show.
Cheers.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.
So we are here with Alex Bochel. So this man is a Twitch live streaming gamer, music producer, cat dad, and full-time chandelier, which I believe is the correct way of pronouncing a candle maker. But he's here to share a cup of coffee with us. Alex, you seem to have a wide range of interests, but I think it's really interesting that you kind of weave them together in a fairly seamless way. Just kind of pick things from different aspects of your life and kind of make it one thing. So to start us off, how did things like making music, making candles, how did that come together in your world? Because they seem like fairly different things.
It's all, like, music is the base for everything. So anything that I add on top of it, whether it be candles or gaming or whatever, it has to make sense. It has to be able to push the music part of my career forward. So I started with purely trying to be an artist. One of the things that artists need to do to have some sort of income at the beginning is to sell merchandise, because streaming royalties are really small until you're pretty far into the game. And so I wanted to get creative with the merchandise, and I thought, well, heck, I love candles. I had just recently found the Woodwick candles, which are the candles that crackle when they burn, and I thought that was just the coolest thing. It sounded like a mini fireplace. And part of my brand is like fairy lights and string lights around everything. And I thought, okay, well, fire, that's a light. I can name the candles after my songs, have them have similar scents. And I figured that'd be a good way to make some income with the few people that did like my music. And then people who didn't like my music started to get into them too. So then I started selling them to people who had no idea who I was as an artist. Then I thought, well, maybe I'll try a farmer's market. So I did that. And then I did another farmer's market. And it's just kind of turned into both a big piece of my artist brand, but also a sustainable business by itself.
That's so interesting. So it started out mutually as just merchandise? You weren't like trying to make it into like a candle business? Huh.
Nope. It's still technically under just the music business itself, so it's not even in the eyes of the law separate, but it is for some people. But yeah, it started off being just part of it.
That's really cool. Is there a reason it's not separate in the eyes of the law, or is that just because it's how it's progressed?
Because I didn't feel like having 2 bank accounts for 2 different sources of income.
Hey man, keep business simple, you know?
Yep. I figured.
Yeah. Why make it so complicated?
Exactly.
Right on. I like the idea that you were talking about before we hopped on, that you have like the QR code on the back of the candles. That's, I feel like, such a unique aspect of any product. That's really cool. Like candles, I've never seen a candle with a QR code. I'm sure they exist, but it's really cool.
Yeah, I've seen it on other things. There's like a brand of seltzer water that has a Spotify QR code, and there's a wine that has a Spotify QR code. But those were always sort of disappointing because it was never directly related to, that thing. It was just a random playlist made by the company. So I thought, well, I can take that a step further and have the QR code go to a playlist that is, like, all the songs are the candles, basically. Mm-hmm. But then I also, instead of just sending them to a playlist, I decided to put a link tree in the QR code. So if they scan the QR code, they can either go to the music, they can go to a landing page that gives them a chance to win a free candle, or they can go buy the candles. So the idea is everyone that has a candle has an easy way to, like, get back into the ecosystem of either the candles or the music. And it's worked decently well. I mean, people do listen to that playlist, so I guess that's a win.
Yeah, let's show you something. It's so interesting. It's like innovating something as old as a candle. I don't know how old candles are, but
modernizing it.
Pretty fun. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, pretty innovative. Do you have any people that inspire you? Like any people that have like innovated that you're like, oh, maybe not obviously steal their ideas, but like innovators that have inspired you?
Like idolize any individuals you idolize.
Yeah, well, there's actually one person very in particular for the candle one. She was like a Celtic heavy metal artist, and she did a bunch of YouTube tutorials on how she marketed her music, and then she decided to get into candle making. Mm-hmm. But with her candles, she decided to make the candles not related to her music at all. Mm-hmm. But her candles were branded very specifically. They were all like mythical, and there was like goblins and trolls and stuff. And I thought that was super cool. Like I'd never seen candles that had that kind of very specific branding in them. Yeah. And I had never seen someone market candles as well as she did. A lot of people that do candle businesses, it's not like a full-time thing. It's like a hobby. And so they're not really aggressively marketing, but she was, and she used like your email list, and she uses all the social media accounts, and it all just works so well. And she brought her candle business from like nothing to 7 figures within the course of like a year and a half. I was like, that is amazing. Obviously, I'm not planning on doing that. I don't have all of the marketing talents that she has gotten over the last, however many years she's been doing it. But that inspired me a lot. That made me think that it would actually be a sustainable thing for me to do to support myself with the music stuff.
So interesting how you can game business like that too. Like you can have a specific strategy and then you hit the jackpot. Or like who would expect candles of all things, but she made it work and branded it and added it all its own unique flair, and then she made out of it like that, which is so interesting.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right, because I wouldn't have expected anything like that either. And the more that I thought about it, and the more that I basically looked into what the business model is for candle making, it makes so much sense. I mean, you make a candle for a third of the price that you sell it for. It takes maybe a $500 investment to start up a candle business. Yeah. So tiny investment to start up, a pretty good profit margin that people are willing to pay for. Like for handmade candles, people are willing to buy those. And while all of the young entrepreneurs are focused on like huge, big tech things or like making this crazy new product, like some of the obvious things go overlooked, like candles.
Yeah.
Selling a physical product as opposed to something online that is the hot thing to do.
Yeah. It's almost like there's a structure to a good business model. There's a structure, like there's a certain structure, if applied correctly, it practically creates a certain outcome. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really matter if it's big tech or like candles, it'll just work. Interesting if it innovates correctly, which is that's very, very, very cool. It's like Play-Doh in this forums. we're going to bring it there. And I got to use the degree for something, Alex.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like the forms, and it's like the form of a good business, and then that's all you're reaching for, as opposed to, like you were, to your point, we're saying sometimes people get lost and looking for the big thing, and then sometimes it's right there. It's just how you apply it step by step, which I think might be a good transition to talking about, you and your experience in music, and you deciding to jump into that pool. You saw the big thing, which was the music industry, and then what made you just say, I'm going to take the practical step to get into this?
It seemed like it was a long time coming. I got my first, do you know what Paper Jam's guitars are?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a plastic guitar that had like 5 notes you could play.
Yeah.
And you would just like press this button to make a strum sound. And I got one of those for Christmas when I was in like 8th grade. And I started writing heavy metal songs with those 5 notes. And I figured out how to hook it up into my computer. And I sang screamo vocals. I recorded, my iPod Touch had like a drum set, and so I recorded that, and I just had a 3-track song, my screamo vocals, the Paper Jam's guitar, and my drum kit on my phone. And I wish I still had the recording. It was so ridiculously bad, but I was like, how cool is it that I made that? Like, I don't care that it sounds so terrible. Like, I dedicated an afternoon to making this awesome, not awesome, but this screamo song. Yeah. And so from there, I started getting really into like punk rock, like more of that pop punk rock. I love Sum 41. They've been my favorite band for a while. Yeah. But I learned how to play some of their songs on the piano. And then my parents bought me a guitar when I went to high school. I started writing music in high school, never recorded it, always wanted to like play guitar in a band, but that kind of thing seemed to be dying out, and I wasn't a great guitarist. I loved making the music, but I wasn't amazing at playing it. Mm-hmm. So I kind of put it all on the back burner. But later in high school, I started selling 8-bit songs to people, like chiptune songs from like Super Mario Bros. So that kind of style. I would make them, and I would write it for other people's games or intros to their YouTube videos. And I made a little bit of money on Fiverr doing that. And then college came around. I continued writing music a little bit, but I got super busy with studying computer science and just focusing on extracurriculars. And so all of the music stuff fell by the wayside until my senior year, when I discovered EDM. I don't know how I really missed it all of my life, because it was huge throughout, all of my high school and college days, but I heard the song Faded by Alan Walker. I thought, oh my gosh, these sounds are so cool. I found out that these producers were like their own artists. Like, they weren't in a band, they weren't playing instruments, they could make the music and be the artist. And I thought, that seems like the perfect thing for me. I'm not a great instrument player, but I can sit behind a computer for hours, figure this stuff out, and release it as an artist. So I started thinking more about that. And my senior year, I got really into reading Jordan Peterson books. I loved his lectures. And he was talking about how you got to find the thing that you can do in life that makes all of the hardships and suffering worthwhile. I was like, shit, okay. Definitely have to do that. But I had a good friend my senior year who was in my fraternity. And we had a football game coming up, and all of my fraternity and all my friends were getting ready for the football game. And we got a call, and we found out someone in the school had jumped from the 5th story of a parking garage. And no one knew who it was. Everything was just rumors. But the next day we found out that it was one of our members and my friend. And it just kind of like shook me to the point where I was like, okay, if there's any point in time in my life that I need to make a change and pursue the thing that is actually meaningful for me, so that I don't find life not worthwhile, because I decided at that moment that I needed to try doing something that made life worthwhile, and that thing was music. And so I basically skipped all my classes my second half senior year. Luckily, my GPA was good enough that it didn't matter that I missed all these classes. Spent all that time making music and learning how to produce, and after college, instead of going into computer science, took a job as a regional director for a nonprofit, traveled, lived out of my car, and after that, I just cut all the professional stuff loose and decided that I was going to figure out how to make a living with music, even if I had to live in my parents' upstairs. That's how I got here.
Holy shit. I thought you had an interesting story, but that, like, completely blew me away.
I hope I didn't spit out too much at once.
No, I mean, a lot, but good. But good stuff, man. That's so incredible. You know, it sounds like there's a very obviously meaningful point in your life that conjected with the introduction of you to this new form of music, and it kind of spurred up this emotion in you that made you want to completely change the trajectory of your life. I mean, is that fair to say?
Yes, for sure.
It didn't just happen by happenstance. Like, all of these things happen in such a way that, you know, you changed your life for a completely different manner. That's so incredible. Was that something that you felt coming? Was that something that, like, that change, something that you think was like something that I was anticipating, or was that moment just like something that completely shook you and then made you reevaluate things?
It was a mix of both. I didn't anticipate any of the changes, but when I decided to make the changes, looking back, it made a lot of sense. It almost seemed like everything that I was studying in college, all of my extracurriculars that were difficult, were all giving me the things that I needed to be able to pursue music. Like, studying computer science, I mean, it's very technical, it's very logic-based. It is pretty creative, but it is also really great just for figuring out both technical details in music production itself, but also in the marketing space too. It's like, okay, you have this huge chain of the things that you do in marketing. Is it working? If not, how do I find the point of logic in that whole line that I need to fix, and then find it, isolate it, fix it, and then see if that works. And it's helped me to be very methodical about things. And it's also taught me that sometimes you have to spend weeks on a single tiny problem to move forward, and that's okay. And I don't think I'd be able to do things like that without computer science. And I was also, the fraternity I was in was SIGEP. I don't know if you had that at your school.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know how it was at your campus. It's different at all campuses, but the national organization is trying to do things a lot different than they had been, and that typical fraternities generally do them. And so the challenges that we face were things like, we had our house, and we wanted to basically ban alcohol from being in the house because one, it tanks people's grades when it's in the house, it destroys the property, all this stuff. And so trying to convince an entire fraternity of college guys that this was a good idea and that it was necessary to move forward was an incredibly difficult task, and it took a lot of really awful conversations and hard decisions, and that kind of thing helped prepare me for, like, all of the failure I face in music. I mean, it is so rare that something good happens, or like you have a little win, that you can't do it unless you have some sort of practice failing all the time. And you also love the thing. So those things all, it made sense once I made the decision. Like, I think I have the skill sets to attempt this career path.
I mean, talk about a hard sell, trying to tell a bunch of fraternity brothers that they can't have alcohol. You know, that's funny too, because we both rushed, and I think around the time that I was rushing, when I visited SIGEP, that was, I think, around the same time period that they were maybe making those changes, because they were talking about it. That's interesting. Yeah. That's so interesting to talk about the things that maybe not directly were done to pursue a career in music, but have really helped you out. But speaking on the fact of, like, always needing repeated failure, that sounds a little bit. And sorry, I'm jumping back a little bit. You were talking about Jordan Peterson. having that repeated failure or not being afraid to try things just because they're difficult. Was there any hesitancy when you started getting into things like candle making and music that you did have a little bit of background in, but to be fair, like not an extensive background in either? Like, what was that process like? Did you have to repeatedly remind yourself of that, or was it just kind of easy sailing for you?
I definitely did. When I went into it, I had my mindset going into it was, it doesn't matter how long it takes. I love making the music, and if I love that process, I know I can do it enough to where I actually become good at it. I was definitely delusional in some ways about how quick that process would be. So whenever I felt depressed from making slow progress, that's when I needed to remind myself that this is, like, the progress is not the part that matters the most. The part that matters the most is I'm doing it, and I am making progress. I need to stop setting these goalposts for myself that are unrealistic. But when it came to trying and failing at making the music, that part has come not easily, but it has been smoother sailing than, say, I don't know, trying to market it. Marketing is a whole different story, but the actual making of the music has been pretty smooth.
You released a lot of music in 1 year, too. I mean, it was like, what, more than 10 releases in 1 year?
I think it's 12 now. Maybe. I have 2 more that are coming before the year is, at least, no, 3 more that are coming before the year is over. So I wanted to be at like 14, 15, somewhere there.
And with each release, do you feel like you're coming into more of your own style as an artist? Has it been a journey of understanding yourself, a journey of reaching closer to what you feel like you already are? What's it been like for Alex on that path?
It's weird because I have cycles that I go through when I'm making a song, where I start it, I usually struggle getting some idea that I like, but I come up with an idea, I really like it. Usually a third of the big ideas that I start, I end up finishing. And so I have the idea, I love it, I work on it, get nowhere, make some big progress in a couple of days. Then I get to the point where I'm starting to finish the song. I do the final mix. I think it sounds so good. I'm like, this is the best song I've ever released. It is the most me style. It is the most honest, the best lyrics, all this stuff. And then I say it's finished. I send it to go be released. And I listen to it and I think, oh God, this is terrible. This is not ready to be released. I have to take it down. I have to finish it. I hate it. I always get to the point where I basically hate my songs by the time they come out. And then 3 months later, after the release, I listen to it. I'm like, okay, wait, this is actually pretty good. This was a big step ahead from my last song. But so it's usually 3 months after my most recent song is released, I look back on it and think, this is definitely the most honest song and the best song that I could have released at this time. That's usually how it goes.
That's a hard thing to designate too, though, I bet. I mean, it depends on your personality, but to say this is the best I can do right now for this project, that's got to be so difficult with something like music, especially if you have a computer science background too, because I feel like you kind of hit the algorithm and then it works, or like you get everything and it clicks. But with what you're talking about, it's more just, it's like this moving, shaping vibe. And you're just like, good enough. And then you like spank it and it goes off.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, what that has been like for you, that transition, and then trying to get your computer science brain to be okay with, like, this is as good as it's going to be, which is probably got to be like infuriating if you're, depending on, I don't know your personality specifically, but I would assume it's probably a little frustrating.
I feel like overall computer science has helped me more than it's hurt me, for sure. But the idea of something working or not has definitely been a hindrance, because when you're working on a song, it's like, yes, there are some technical things that are sort of like rules of thumb and things that you should follow, but in the end, any rule can be broken and that can be okay. And so figuring out which things I should break is really difficult, because in computer science, you don't break anything. You make everything work. And so with this, it's almost like computer science, but also you get to decide to do things wrong. And sometimes doing those things wrong is the best way of doing it. Yeah. And that's tough. And I will often listen to my song and then listen to another song that isn't even exactly the same style and hear maybe like a louder kick drum in this other song and think, oh my gosh, this kick drum is so loud, mine should be that loud. But then I have to remember, okay, in this style of song, it definitely should not be louder. But I'll go and I'll try to make, whatever instrument it is that I heard in another song louder or more thick or something, and I'll listen to it later and think, God, why would I do that? It doesn't make sense in this context of this song. Yeah. And so like with code, you can compare your code to someone else's, and then you could basically say, okay, this is a better way of doing it, and just kind of copy paste it over. But with music, just because someone else does something a certain way doesn't mean it fits. And just because someone else gives you feedback that you should do something specific definitely does not mean you should do that thing, because it's their taste, and their taste, it does not matter in the end.
Yeah, I don't know who the quote's from. I do this a lot, but I heard it somewhere that along the lines of within music you have to learn the rules to break the rules. No idea who said that, but I think that's really cool that you're saying like you have to even if it fits somewhere else doesn't mean it's going to fit in your style. Like you can know the rules, you can know that this is how this type of song is supposed to be, but you still got to experiment and make it your own.
Exactly. And that's kind of the sign that has made me feel like I'm maturing in my own production and creativity, because I'm no longer taking feedback from people in a sense that they are telling me, oh, something should be louder or something should be different. I think, okay, they are saying this thing about my song, but what is my song meant to do? Like, what is the key element? What is the purpose of it? I know enough about the technical details that I can disregard a lot of other people's opinions in certain ways, because they don't know what I'm trying to accomplish. Yeah. And people that don't produce, they're not even going to notice these subtle differences between mixing styles and everything. And so it doesn't even matter to the typical listener. But producers like to make everything their own. And so their feedback will be based on what they would do, which isn't necessarily good feedback.
It's got to be difficult with something as intimate as music, too. Yeah. You're creating this thing, and then you have a vision of where it's supposed to go, and then you feel like the criticism sometimes disrupts the process of you making your own song at that point, because people are just kind of giving their 2 cents, but you're like, well, I'm still in development, and you're judging it on the wrong category, so you got to kind of look for the right audience, I would guess.
Yes, exactly.
Criticize you. So who is that for you? Like, where do you get your peer reviewing from, if you do?
It's pretty much just this one guy. I hire him on Fiverr. I pay him $10. He listens to my song. He gives me very detailed feedback, and he doesn't give me feedback based on anything creative. I don't know how he does it so well, but he basically disregards anything that might be his own opinion about the sound and just gives me very technical, like, your song is this style, this is the reference track you gave to me. If you want it to have as big of a punch as this song, or if you want it to have as big of a impact when the drop hits as this song, then you might want to consider this thing. And so it's very logical feedback, and he's the only one, and he's an audio engineer too, so he can tell me things that I wouldn't even be able to hear because my speakers aren't good enough. And he gives me specific frequencies that might sound off and specific things that I can do to fix them. And he's pretty much the only person that I'll go to, because every time I have tried to go give it to someone else to give me feedback, it's just like they give me the feedback and I just think, no, I'm not going to, like, that's not good feedback. That's what you would do in your style. Yeah. So I only go through this one guy, and he's awesome. I have probably over the course of this year paid him like $500 for all of the times I've sent him in a song to listen to.
So interesting. Who is this mysterious Fiverr guy?
I don't even know his name. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like Bezerate on Fiverr. He's just awesome. I actually also ordered like a 1-hour session with him on Zoom, and he went in and helped me with like very specific things too. And I swear, he saved some of my songs from being hilariously bad on big systems if I hadn't have sent something into him.
You gotta love the internet, man. To be able to find something. Is that something I gotta know? Is that something you stumbled upon, or is that like recommendation that you got from somebody else to find somebody like removed to do the? Or
I got so lucky. I found there were 2 people on Fiverr, like the top 2 ones that came up when I searched EDM mixing feedback, and I sent it to both of them. He gave me this huge wall, and at that time it was only $5 to order it, and he sent me this huge wall of text with all of the different things lined out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know some of these concepts existed in audio engineering. And then the other guy sent over like, oh, that sounds pretty good. I mastered your track for free because I thought the mixing was perfect. Don't change anything. I was like, oh wow, so we've got very different qualities in delivery here.
That's so interesting. I think that's applicable in life. Like,
yeah, who's constructive criticism versus who's just like just throwing their flavor on there.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to your character. I feel like it'd be much easier to just be like, oh, this guy likes it, it should be fine. But instead you go towards a person that's giving you, a laundry list of things that, but I wonder.
Such a subtle, it's like getting very precise because it's comforting to just listen to the echo chamber that tells you you're good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also seductive to go into the gym or just moving on your ideas, feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Like that fine line, really, where's the constructive, like building blocks,
yes.
Step by step, regardless of what industry you're at. And hopefully that piggybacks into what you're about to dive into, but finding that point, that frequency,
the point,
constructive, generative realm.
Getting rid of the ego, but not being self-deprecating.
Mm-hmm. Which is like in itself, the ego just kicking itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it seems like you have a good sense of that. Like I saw one of your posts the other day where you're like, look at how hilariously bad this demo was, and it was of your new song by the sea. And like, of course, the first demo of any song is going to be bad, but you were able to laugh at it and put it out there. Like it was cool.
I don't know how I would have been so frozen if I had even had the thought of putting that out when I had done it. I'm very glad that I could do that without feeling awful.
What's changed between now and then?
I was a very, very, very unconfident person up throughout pretty much high school. Like, I'm a super big introvert. Always have been. I was very, very shy throughout high school. I had trouble talking to, like, women. I had trouble talking to parents. I even had social anxiety talking to my friend group because I didn't want to say something stupid and get made fun of. And it was often dumb stuff, but it, like, at the time, it felt huge. And I just wanted to get past all that. And I downloaded, what was it called? I downloaded an ebook online called How to Always Know What to Say. And it was basically like my first entry into how do you make yourself a little bit better so that you don't suck as bad world. And I read the book and I practiced the things and like got a little bit better. And then college came and I joined the fraternity, and it was all about self-development and how do we recruit people to join this organization. And that required me to go out and talk to people and have all of these small talk conversations to build into more meaningful conversations. And I just had so much practice with it that I got more confident in that skill and just as a person. And so now it's like I don't even recognize who I was in high school in terms of confidence or anything like that, because I don't have a lot of the fears I did then. So I'm okay with showing people embarrassing stuff and stupid things that I've made.
Even more impressive of what you learned. Even more interestingly too, you went on to create a whole community on Twitch, and that AD fam. I mean, that's compared to where you were to where you are now. When did you start that, and how did you create that community? Where is it at now? And can you kind of bring us into that world a bit?
Yes, it was started with just my Discord server, because I have an email list for my music stuff, and I have a Discord server, and basically the mailing list is for people who are like over 15 or over 18, and then the Discord server is for all my fans who are younger than that. And so I had the Discord server, me and my music listeners would talk in that, and then we played a game of Among Us, and it was super fun, and so they were like, you should stream stuff on Twitch. And so then I bought a Minecraft realm and started streaming that on Twitch, and they would just play in the Minecraft realm with me. And it was really just kind of, I just took the suggestions of the people that were already into my music, and they basically built out the Discord server. They taught me how to use Twitch, and now I'm just kind of casually streaming weekly with the people that like my music.
Yeah.
Twitch is still weird for me. Like, it's weird to do it. It's like weird talking when no one else is like talking back and like trying to have a conversation with myself. It does not come naturally whatsoever.
You're doing it though.
But I'm trying to do it.
Compared to 6-7 years ago, I think that's something that's important.
Oh yeah. When you compare it to that, for sure.
For like progression over time. You were bringing up Jordan Peterson earlier, but that's one of his key points. Like incremental progress over time makes big impacts.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, kind of like what you were talking about before the podcast started with the, like, when you're looking at a problem, think to yourself, okay, I'll give myself 10 years for this. It takes that kind of time to make what in the end will be a huge change.
Yeah, it's like postponing the instant gratification. And then, in your case, your story, taking the discomfort that probably came initially with doing all these new things that you weren't comfortable with. And something as uncomfortable as, taking the jump like you did to get into the music industry after, leaving computer science, which is pretty good job security in that field. Like, I'm talking a bit outside my circle of competence a little ignorantly right now.
No, you're good so far. Yeah.
Cool. But like there's some job security in that, and then you jumped off to do something that's high risk and entrepreneurial and all those things while starting all these creative ventures that are high risk in nature and then high reward.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of job security in computer science. I just would not be nearly as fun.
Definitely.
I think the whole concept of 10 years is so important for people to think of too, but I think it goes, and I wonder if you agree with this concept too, I think it goes beyond just like knowing that you have to dedicate 10 years. Like the incremental change, it's like one thing to know that, but I think also it's important to recognize that some of these skills, I would probably argue a lot of these skills aren't like linear progression either. It's not going to be like like every single day you're going to get this much amount better, this much amount better. I think it's more of like a very strong like exponential curve. Like you're just making a little bit of progress here and there, and then once you get to a certain point, you kind of hit a pocket and it starts getting easier. Would you agree with that?
Yes, on the long-term basis for sure.
Yeah.
And then to add on to that even more, like if you zoom into it, it's like you have a lot of just no progress whatsoever, and then a big jump, and then it could fall a little bit, and then no progress and big jump, and like maybe once a week I'll be working on music and I will make something that I think is cool or like a good change or make progress in the song. Every single other day is just playing with things and nothing happening and feeling like an absolute failure every single time. But over time, the big jumps you make on a weekly basis start becoming like the exponential curve.
Interesting. That's a really interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
How do you get past the times when you feel like you're not making exponential changes? Is it just like, oh, it's one of those days, or do you remind yourself of something, or is it still difficult for you?
It is definitely it's weird. It's kind of like how I said with I have a cyclical nature with each song where I have nothing, I love it, I'm not making any progress, so I'm like then I love it again, and then I hate it. It's like some days I can shrug it off and just like move on to the next thing, no problem. But then other days I'll just like obsess over it and dig into it, and then I'll start like Google searching like, why are musicians depressed? Or like how to get over depression for musicians, like how to not put so much pressure, like just like diving into it and like trying to figure out why it's such a difficult thing to wrap my head around when it's just music, or it's just music, so why is it so difficult? So I have not figured out a good way of getting past it. I think for the rest of my life, it'll just be like some days it really sucks, and it's like I just have to keep on living until the next day when it's not so bad again. If that's the case, then I can live with that.
Yeah. would you say, is it fair to say that the days that you are inspired or the days that you are feeling great about music outweighs the days that it's difficult?
It is like, there is no better feeling that I've ever experienced than putting something into my computer, having it sound amazing, and just dancing around my room to a song that I just made and thinking like, this is it. Like, this is my soul. I have put it in the computer and I love it. It is an incredible rush.
That's a really interesting phrase you just said there. You said, put my soul into a computer, and this is the results of it, essentially. I think that's such a interesting thing. I mean, I guess a lot of music now is at least recorded digitally, but EDM specifically is almost entirely electronic, but you're still trying to get your heart and soul into something and convey an emotion through something so digital. I think that concept's just so crazy.
Yeah. It's weird because a lot of EDM isn't super emotional, but even for the songs that aren't super emotional, like the work it takes to get it finished and the process of creating the song, it makes every single song like a piece of your soul and like just very delicate and like fragile. Same thing as delicate. Don't know why I had to use two words there.
Synonyms, baby.
The more synonyms, the better.
Yeah.
we fall into the same. Well, I can speak for myself, but we're writing things up. We're like amazingly awesome. Yeah. It's like, why the fuck?
Yeah.
Fluffy, floating, fluffing clouds.
Yeah. And I think, Alex, your style specifically too, and I think it's so interesting that you say the computer science background. Like, if I were to think of a computer science background person that got into EDM, it wouldn't be the style that you put out. It's so flowy and fluent. Like, if I think of a computer science, like I'm thinking like G. Jones or like a drum and bass person or something like very like methodical. Did you at one point? Did you ever have music? Were you putting out music that was more like that, or have you always been okay?
It's always been very melodic. Everything, like, the most important thing to me in music is the melody. And so some people love the groove, some people love the bass line. There's a lot of popular music now that doesn't really have a melody at all, and people really like that. But for me, it's like, could it be played on a piano, and would that emotionally move me? And so that's kind of how I want it to be. I want each song to be able to translate to any instrument, to any voice, and have it be an emotional piece. And I don't know why the computer science thing was there. I do like logical things and very straightforward things, and it just coexists with the creative side as well. And even when I was in computer science, like, I would do some dumb things because I would try to be really creative with the code, and a lot of times you don't have to do that. And like, I would come up with these extravagant solutions that just usually didn't work, but were just so incredibly unnecessary. And it's like, when I can't remember if we were talking about this on the podcast or before, but you mentioned like sometimes like the good business idea is like pretty simple and straightforward, and it's not this huge extravagant thing. In computer science, a lot of times it's like that too. It's like you can do it more simply, and it can be a good solution. It doesn't have to be this huge jumbled mess. But the creative side of me was creating this huge jumbled mess. So it's not so much that computer science bled into my music. It's more like my music kind of was bleeding into computer science.
Yeah, that's such a powerful mental exercise, though, when you were talking about taking something really complicated and just looking for the simplest solution. But it's very interesting, the insight that creative people make. They make it so convoluted with the ideas, and it creates really intricate, complex, beautiful thing that feels like sometimes the cup's just a cup.
Yeah.
You're looking at it and you're like, it's not just a cup. It's like 80 other things. I'm like,
yep.
Hey, but does it help you at that moment?
Exactly. Like, in this context, is it okay to look at it that way?
Yeah.
A lot of times it's not, and that's okay. It's like, creative solutions are oftentimes wrong.
Sometimes it is helpful, though, to create like a melody like you're talking about that transcends between different platforms.
Yes.
Trying to do it, where it's like you can play it on guitar and it gives an experience, and it's also used in the world, and it also does this, and it's this little hive of awesome vibes that just propagates out in like 30 different directions. Just fucking amazing. And I'm getting so excited.
Fucking amazing.
I can feel that.
I think it's like, I'm glad we're having this conversation for a lot of reasons, Alex, but I've heard people like in computer science before, one of our old roommates, Riccio, before, say that.
Shout out Riccio.
Shout out Riccio. It's the off chance you're listening to this.
Yeah.
That coding and computer science, there is a creative aspect to it, and I always brush them off thinking they're kind of crazy, but I mean, when you put it the way you have, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, there are definitely times when it's needed. Like, more often than not, there's a problem in computer science. It can be solved with a straightforward solution. It doesn't have to be creative. But there are definitely times when there's a problem that you wouldn't expect, and there has to be something creative to be done about it. And everything that you can do, you can do in like unlimited ways. And so it's like, how do you want to make the solution for this? So there's definitely a creative side, depending on the field too. I mean, if you're in like game development, which I developed a game when I was in college just for fun, like that was incredibly creative, and it was so fulfilling to do. And like I miss that. I want to code a game. That sounds like so much fun even now.
What was your game? What did you code?
It's called Save the Pigs. It's not on the App Store right now because it cost me like $100 a year to put it up, and not enough people downloaded it, obviously, to cover that. But it was basically just like a side-scrolling jumping game, except instead of one character jumping, you had two characters jumping. Each one could only land on their respective color, like moving platforms, and you controlled each one with a different side of the screen. So it was really, really difficult, but I thought it was pretty fun. I wish it was still in the App Store so you could try it out.
It's a lot of I don't know if I can do that.
I might go cross-eyed doing that, Alex.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of... I only got good at it because if I didn't get good at it, I wouldn't be able to finish developing it because I needed to test it out. Like far enough into the level where I could see like, is the harder part actually working? So
it sounds like one of those impossible games, like Shiba Hut. I don't know if you're familiar. I don't know if it's on the East Coast, but it's just like this stoner sandwich shop. They made a game that's kind of similar, but I'm guessing that it's supposed to be unbeatable because they said
it always quits out when you get right to the high score.
Right to the high score. Yep. Yeah. So if they're like if you get past like X mark, you get free sandwiches for the rest of your life. And we have a friend that really enjoys food, so he was like dead set on beating that X score. And every time he'd get like 20 points away.
And he's so competitive too. He's extremely competitive and like super just locked in on stuff like that.
Oh, that would piss me off so much.
Yeah, I think he played for like probably a couple hours straight, for like
every day for like a week or two.
Wow, he deserved it. That's a shame he didn't get it.
He told us that numerous times as he was doing it. Believe us.
He's like, I'm getting these free sandwiches.
Like, if anyone deserves it, it's me. And he's like, such a character, man.
That's cool. Well, I guess if it's not on the App Store, you can have access to it. But that'd be something fun in the future if you could ever like get it back up and running.
That is the plan.
Oh, cool. That's cool. Yeah, I'm just thinking that there's no way I could. What's the pat in your head? I actually can do that now. Why was that harder as a kid?
Dude, I remember that being impossible, but I feel like I can do it pretty well now.
Yeah. Go for Henry. Ooh, left side's a little weird. Oh, God.
I got it. Yeah, dude, that was impossible as a kid.
It was.
And I remember our parents thought it was hard too. Were they just fucking with us?
They might have just been messing with us.
Huh.
Oh, yeah, well, I never thought about it like that. Maybe they were.
I don't know.
Or maybe my parents just happen to be very uncoordinated. Very possible.
Okay, Alex, left turn. I had this question pop up, but didn't seem to present itself in a good place, so I want to bring it back up. You mentioned that the guy on Fiverr would give you like feedback on what like genre or whatever your music would fit into. Kind of curious, what type of genres do you perceive your music fitting into, and what did that Fiverr guy like consider it?
I always have trouble categorizing it deeper than EDM, which is ridiculous because there's so many subgenres that you kind of have to know what subgenre it is. it's kind of like a lot of people will say progressive house or electro house, or even electro pop, but it's not really house music. I mean, it has a lot of the songs have a 4-on-the-4 beat, and that's a pretty house thing, but it's more along the lines of pop, like a pop EDM mix, than it is any sort of house music. But when people ask, I generally just say it's like pop EDM. Yeah. That's about as deep as I go, because I can't, or for some of the songs like a folk EDM thing. But all of the house genres don't seem to fit, because like house music is very consistent, and there's like it's usually longer, and there's not like a main hook and like verse chorus. That's generally a little more consistent. But I just stick with EDM and pop.
That's fair. Some of those subgenres get a little shaky, anyways. So yeah, it's so funny too, because I feel like we've had two schools of artists. One, they're like, genres aren't really important. But we've also had a couple artists where like, this song was like this subgenre, and this is why. And it's like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah, dude, I have no idea. Like this, I don't know how to categorize subgenres. At the beginning, I had some ridiculous ideas of what my music was, and I would be submitting it to these playlisters, and they're like, why would you send this to me? This sounds absolutely nothing like any of the tracks in this playlist. I was like, really? But your playlist is progressive house. And that's what people said this song was. And then I listened to their playlist, and it's like, oh shit, like, yeah, you're right. My song is nothing like any of these songs whatsoever. But yeah, so you go to another progressive house playlist, and it's a bunch of songs that sound like mine. So genres aren't real. That's my take.
People put their perception on genres. But I saw that By the Sea got added to was it an indie playlist? Or was it By the Sea?
Yeah, it was like an indie folk playlist. Which is a first for any of my songs for sure. It makes sense. It's the most indie sounding of any of the songs I've produced, but it was kind of cool. It was like I always loved folk and indie music, so it's cool that I was considered good enough to be in whatever that playlist was.
That's so cool. What's the process? Do you reach out to people and ask like, hey, can I be on this playlist? Or
a little bit. Sometimes I do. I used to do that a lot in the beginning, but it is not as good of a strategy as I originally had thought it was. But I myself curate playlists, and I get paid to review people's music for potentially putting it on there. And so I use those same platforms that I use to curate the playlists to send my music out to other playlisters.
Interesting. And when you said it wasn't a good strategy, just not very effective, didn't have like really good returns when you were outreaching?
Yeah, so there's the problem of like maybe 1 in 100 playlisters will like your song and want to add it, because it's like people's taste varies so much. And even if 100 people out of like 200 would like your song, there's a really good chance that the playlister is one of the 100 people that aren't going to like the song. So it's time intensive. A lot of people say no. Even when people do say yes, a lot of times there's bots going on in the playlists. Like if people ask you to pay them to be in the playlist, that's a bunch of bots. And a lot of times, just because your song is in a playlist doesn't mean anyone's actually listening to it actively. Because people put on a playlist, a lot of times they forget about what they're listening to. Only specific people will go into a playlist to actively find new music. And so people don't really discover you in playlists. And you can get 1,000 streams a day because you're in a giant playlist, but the second your song is removed, it's cut down to basically nothing. You're back down to the baseline. So I don't like it as an overall strategy of getting music heard.
It's better places to put your resources than sending out a bunch of different requests.
Yes. And it has its time and place, and I still do it. Just not, that's not the main thing I do. It's just kind of like a supplemental strategy.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I would think, too, just having your community and then growing your community would probably feed and advertise your music in itself, right? So you wouldn't even, people would just start listening to your music because they have a relationship with you, and you kind of go from there, and that saves a lot of effort on your time while allowing you just to be more genuine and do what you enjoy doing. Have you had that experience with your community on Discord where they follow you and you generate a relationship and you don't have to worry as much about marketing?
Yes, the community on Discord, it's like, I think 104 people, so it's not huge, but I mean, that's like the 104 of my biggest supporters. And so that's like the most important thing, like you were saying, is cultivating that community and those relationships there. That does a lot of the marketing. Doing that is 1,000 times better than reaching out to a bunch of playlisters.
Right. Are they the ones buying you coffee?
Yes. Yep. That, like, no one would hear me on a playlist and then decide I'm going to buy this guy some coffee. It is the people in the Discord or on the email list that do that.
That's such a cool concept.
It is a cool concept.
Does that 100% always go towards coffee, or is that just a cute way of saying, like, help support me?
It's just a cute way of saying it. I mean, honestly, in some roundabout way, that money does go to getting coffee, because I do get coffee, so that money's coming from somewhere. But I just liked it better than Patreon, because I thought it sounded more inviting to ask someone to buy you a coffee than to, like, join your Patreon.
Yeah. I feel like it's so cool. I mean, sorry, this is going to be a broad thing. I'm going to focus it back in.
None of those questions here.
I feel like there's a lot of problems that come along with the modern age, but there's a lot of really cool, exciting things too. But it's so dope that people can find very particular things, like making candles or making a very specific type of music that's cool to them, and then create a community around that. I think it just is a testament to the possibilities of, like, modern era, and what would you say to somebody who, like, may have always wanted to pick up something very niche or follow their dreams of doing X, but the rest of their life path is bringing them Y? Like, I mean, obviously you're living proof that it's possible, but what would you say to that person that's like, I don't know, is it really possible?
I would the longer I do this, the more not pessimistic I become about it, but the more pessimistic I become about other people doing it, because I see, like, okay, if I were to tell or give any sort of, like, say anything to someone who wanted to pursue some other path, it'd be, would you pursue this even if you never got anywhere professionally whatsoever for the rest of your life? Would you still do it because you like to do it? If the answer is yes, then go for it. You can definitely do it. It's okay if it takes 50 years, because when you're 70 years old, you'll have made it, and it wouldn't matter how long it took because you like doing it. But a lot of times, it's almost as if we like the idea of the thing, and so we want to do it, but the reason we don't end up succeeding is because we don't do it long enough to succeed, and the only way to do it long enough to succeed is by loving it enough to get past the intense failure that happens throughout the process.
Yeah. How would you recommend to a young artist or someone who's interested in music, them determining if they want to enter for the right reasons or not? Because sometimes people will enter for what people could call the wrong reasons.
Right.
Aren't sustainable.
It's tough to have any sort of blanket statement for that. But the most important thing is just make music every single day. If you can do that for a long time, you'll probably find your way into the industry. And people don't have to do what I did and just decide, like, I, on this day, am now switching paths in my career. That's just, I'm an extreme person. I like to make very extreme decisions that people would assume are rash, and sometimes they are, for sure. But it's totally fine to just, like, make the music every single day, like, go home from school or in the morning, make some music, and then let it just kind of happen. Because a lot of these producers that are doing really well, people that I aspire to be, none of them made the decision to, like, I am now going to be a producer. They just loved doing it, and they just did it every day. And eventually, you know, the right label found their music, or they sent it into the right person, and it started to grow. So just do it. Just do the thing. Don't worry about marketing. Don't worry about all this other stuff. Just make the craft. That's what the most important thing is.
Well, you tapped out. It sounds like you become the person. That's kind of what it ends up being. You know,
yeah.
Chasing really anything, you just become what feel like you should be doing or what you are.
Yeah, exactly. And
you don't really worry about the other stuff at that point.
Exactly. And I mean, good marketing always will have its place, and artists that are both really talented and great marketers are going to succeed in amazing ways, but you don't have to necessarily have that in order to enjoy the thing that you're doing.
I think it was George Orwell, might not have been him, that said, I wish more people wrote bad poetry, so that way they could just enjoy the process of making poetry. I totally that quote.
Great quote, though. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
It's just like, I wish more people just made bad poetry. Because if you realize, same thing with singing or anything, you just get so much benefit from it. Even if you're not good at it, it just makes you feel alive.
Yeah.
And in your room, because you made something, like you have, you know?
Yep. And I get people in my Discord all the time. We have a feedback channel, and some people will send in just like crappy tracks all the time, but they're enjoying doing it, and with each one they get a little bit better, and you listen to something someone sends now as opposed to a year ago, and it sounds worlds better. And it's like, that person is probably in it for the right reasons, because they're making stuff, they're sending it to this community, they're improving, but they're not, their goal isn't to just like be a superstar. But then there's also
people's goal too. Sorry for interrupting you, Alex.
No, yeah, go ahead.
It's people's goal when they get into it, they're DJing. We've had the privilege of talking to a lot of different artists, but that's a trend that comes up sometimes. Would you agree?
Yeah.
That sometimes people are going in because they like the clout, the power from it, being the guy or the gal on stage.
Yeah.
I think to talk to other artists, though, and you love the process, you love the intimate relationship with the music. It's cool seeing that contrast.
Yeah, and it's not, it can be, I would like to be able to be on a big stage and be a superstar DJ. Like, I will not deny that for sure. But the process definitely weeds out the people who are in it for that reason. Sometimes it doesn't. People can get lucky for sure, but it does weed out a lot of that.
Yeah. You hinted at it earlier, but I've been curious kind of what some of your inspirations have been generally musically, but also like melodically, because I do really think you have great melodies in your music, but you got to pull from somewhere. What are some of your inspirations?
There's three main ones, all different genres, but all very
beautiful
melody based. The first one was Sum 41. Their guitar riffs were so cool. They weren't just doing the same thing that all the other punk rock bands were doing, playing their guitar the exact same way. They had unique melodies in the riffs, and I just fell in love with that. I mean, that was all stuff that I loved to play on the piano. And then folk music. The artist that sang on By the Sea is my personal favorite folk artist. And so she had been an inspiration the past 2 years. Her melodies and her lyrics just absolutely beautiful. Also, my wife's favorite folk artist is that same person, and we've seen her play multiple shows. I proposed to my wife when one of her songs was playing, like all this crazy stuff. Like, so like she's been a huge inspiration. Such incredible lyrics, amazing melodies. And then I listen to a ton of just solo piano music. Like hours of piano music, and I just get into some of those melodies so hard. Like I can rock out to some solo piano music because the melodies just hit so hard.
I love that. Wow, I had no idea about the depth of By the Sea. Like, I didn't know that artist was one of your favorites. That's so cool.
Yeah, that was like one of I got my pal here. What's up, girl? That was one of those rare wins that happens that makes everything just very worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cute, man.
Yeah, she's the best.
I must have been pretty, I mean, not full circle for you, but at least a mini circle for you. Having the ability to work with that artist and how important that was in you guys' relationship, that's got to be such a cool feeling to be working with that artist.
It was. I will not lie to you. I cried when I heard her vocals when she sent them back to me. I was like, oh, this is too much, man. And I just sat there at my computer, listened to it with my headphones on, and just let it out.
Oh, my God. That's incredible. Did that come about naturally? Did you just reach out to her and she was like, yeah, why not?
Yeah, I was like, screw it. I'm going to email her manager and just see if she likes the song enough to do it. And I emailed the manager. They said, sure, like I'll send it over to her. And then 2 weeks go by. I send another follow-up email. But then no response. And I send another one. I'm like, shoot, she didn't like it. And they're just ignoring me now. Like everyone else does in music. It's just ignoring. There's no replies. It's just ignoring. That's fine. You know, people are busy. But then I emailed like a fourth time. So I was like, I will just email until they email back. I have no shame. And they were like, oh, hey, sorry. She actually switched managers, so I'm not her manager anymore. It's so-and-so. I'll send them the info. I was like, oh, thank God.
Thank you.
I emailed the new manager. She responded within like a day. She was like, yep, I'll send it over to her. And then a few days later, she replied back like, Heather's interested. Let me know your number. I'll send it to her and set up a time for you guys to have a phone call. I was like, no way. But I wouldn't let myself get excited until after the vocals were sent to me, because I was like, there's no way this is true. Like, something is going to go wrong. She's going to pull out of this. It's not going to work out. I'm going to be so disappointed because I was so close to just like a life bucket list item. But it didn't fall apart. It all went smoothly.
Wow. That's so heavy, man. I wonder how much in life we kind of, and not in a regretful way, but how many opportunities we just don't open that door because we're like, oh, that's not possible. You know, that couldn't happen. Right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it's like I have a bunch of failures doing things that I thought were feasible. And so if I had let that affect me and not try something that I thought was absolutely impossible, then like, who knows? Sometimes you'd have these small failures for things that like in the end don't matter that much, but and aren't even that important, but the really big ones that you thought were way out there sometimes work out, and that's a cool thing.
Very cool.
It's like, why not just shoot the shot and see what happens?
Might as well. At that point, I was used to rejection, man, for sure. So I might as well.
There's a quote from Russ, who's on the talk show. He said his favorite line, the most useful quote he ever got, was, "What if it turns out better than you ever imagined?" You go into a situation like that, you just say that to yourself, oh boy, it might not work, but what if it turns out really good? And then that maybe turns out like what happened with you. You get some artist you admire, respect, love, and she ends up being on your song.
And that's enough for any other time in the future when I think to myself, probably shouldn't shoot this shot. It's out of my league. I'm like, no, it's not. Remember that time that you got your favorite singer to be on your song. It's like, that's possible.
Changes your perception of everything. And
for sure.
That's really interesting. It's cool to see that example too. It's very, in your life. It's awesome.
So if you're open to talking about it, I think it's really interesting, the moment in time where you essentially packed up and decided to change your life course. I know we've touched on this, and if you don't want to talk about it, I totally understand. And you talked about some of the overlying motives, but what were some of the deeper thoughts that were going on? Because it seems like such a powerful part of your story. Like what was your thought process during that time period? Because you seem to have gone through a complete transformation.
It's weird because there was so little thought process that happened. It was almost like acting on instinct.
Okay.
Like, these events happened. I snapped into gear and made these decisions, not necessarily, like, without really thinking them all the way through. And I didn't have this, like, existential crisis in my mind. It's just the things were happening and I just shifted gears. Like, I just did it. I did not think about it much at all. Which is probably why I was able to do it. I'm sure if I thought about it, I would have convinced myself that it was a bad idea. But to be completely honest, I wasn't really able to think that much. I didn't want to think that much. I had to do something, and that's what I chose to do.
What was that time period like for you, like day to day, when you were living in your car and you just made a huge change and you're like, I'm not sure what the future holds for me?
It was weird. It's a weird thing. So during that time, I was working for a nonprofit. The reason I was living out of my car is because it would make zero sense for me to have like a home or an apartment. I wasn't making enough to afford rent somewhere. I wouldn't even be at that place for, more than a couple days out of the month or anything like that. And it was strange. I was driving all over the Northeast United States. I would be in a car driving like 14 hours only to get to the place I was staying, have it be in the basement of some dude's house, trash all over the place. There were just weird things would happen in the places I was staying. Like one guy I stayed with, his girlfriend and him got into a fight. He called the cops. They came over and arrested her, and I was just kind of like peering out my window watching this whole thing. I would wake up every morning, make music, then do my job, then make some music, then go to bed. And I'd find myself like in the middle of Vermont in a blizzard, like in my car, freezing my ass off and thinking like, why am I doing this? This makes absolutely no sense. What sane person would ever want to do something like this? But then there would be moments where, like in the fall, I was in Maine in some of the most beautiful national parks I'd ever seen, watching the sunrise. And it's like, oh man, this is pretty cool. Like this is a good life. It was a lot of highs and lows. Like it was almost like manic depressive states, like just questioning to the core why I was doing what I was doing, and having moments where it all made sense and it was very clear. Really weird time.
What nonprofit were you doing, if you don't mind me asking?
It was the nonprofit that runs my college fraternity.
Okay.
And so we were basically going around to every single campus, and we were the ambassadors for the organization at the campus. So we were training people to recruit, member development, handling crisis situations, and then relations between the school and the national organization and the organization on the college campus.
Wow. So you're just roughing it.
There was 14 of us.
14?
Yep. Stayed in some weird places. Most of it was on a couch. Had all of my stuff in my car at all times. It was wild. Like it was really weird. But yeah, there was 14 of us. We all had different parts of the country, and we were all doing the same thing.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you describe it as manic depressive, just kind of like the ups and downs of the experience. But I wonder how much of that is just naturally how life can be. But we get so used to comfortability and not subjecting ourselves to some of the harshities of life, But if you step into that from the comfortability of normal, status quo of day-to-day life, it can probably feel a lot like ups and downs of mania.
Dude, yeah. I mean, I remember when I finished all of that, and then I got running water again. Like, this is amazing. This is what I needed. Like, oh my gosh. And being able to, I had a Planet Fitness Black membership because I just showered in the different gyms in each city. And so I was able to go to the Planet Fitnesses to take my showers and stuff. But having my own sink and being able to, not have my shampoo freeze in my car overnight because I was in the northern part of New York and everything in my car would freeze overnight. Those little things became so appreciated once I was finished with it. And having that situation, like you said, like stepping into that discomfort, it made life very worthwhile, and then it made everything that came after it very meaningful and not taken for granted.
I feel like that's something we could all use a part of in our life at some points, in some degrees. Like you said, you seem like a fairly brash person at times, but just subjecting ourselves to some level of newness, of uncomfortability,
It's a hell of a time. It was the best year of my life. Like the best. I would never, I would always go back and make the exact same decision I did to do it. It was amazing. As awful as it was. Really amazing.
I feel like that discomfort led you to better understand who you are.
For sure. It helped me figure out my limits. It helped me figure out that I could be comfortable in what I thought were very uncomfortable situations. Like trying to convince a room of 200 football playing frat guys to accept that we needed to have a dry house. That is not a fun place to be. You are the enemy in a room of 200 football players. That was very uncomfortable. But like you just, I don't know, it makes everything after that seem a lot easier.
Yeah, you kind of feel like it was a rite of passage almost in your life, that you created for yourself to transform into the next chapter of who you were meant to be. It's kind of a rewording of the question I just asked you, but
actually, I never really thought about it that way, but now that you bring it up, it's like it was the rite of passage from a very normal type of life to something that, like, the rite of passage itself made going into music seem not that crazy, because what I was doing before music was arguably crazier. But it definitely was a rite of passage into shifting into this other unknown realm for me.
Yeah, I think that's something that's lacking in our culture too. We have a segment now that's called talking about shit we're not qualified to talk about.
I remember the segment.
yeah, but I tend to go into it. But what I'm about to say is, I think that's something that's lacking in our culture, though, is that rite of passage. And I guess you could say it exists in different forms. You can find it through somehow, I guess, like sports teams, or so going through school, or tournaments, or what have you. But there's not that big moment when you find out really who you are, which is what you were kind of tapping out, where you're sleeping in your car and shampoo's freezing. Man, you're like, I hate this, but I love this.
It's like, fuck, this is so, it's just weird. Yeah.
Like, I have to do stuff I'm uncomfortable with, and I'm alone. My parents aren't supporting me. Like, a lot of times, not everybody, but some segments of our country who lived in this coddled, privileged society. That's a hot word to use. Hopefully it doesn't get us on Twitter too much.
Hey, man.
Any publicity is good publicity, am I right? But there's this privilege, though, and then we never really find out who we are and what our purpose is, and go through that rite of passage. We change to an actual functioning member of society as opposed to a cog. And that last part was inserting a personal bias and opinion of mine. But main point, I think it's interesting to have that rite of passage, though. It's very interesting you went through it, and it's interesting to see the benefit you got from it. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of that, any of the statements I've made, but it's interesting to see the benefit you got from that. And you even saying, once you went into music, it seemed like it was a lot more manageable than where you were 2 years before that.
Yes. Yeah, no correction needed.
I wonder, we had a previous guest, Spooks, Ezra, who talked to us about kind of a similar moment in his life where he made the decision to pursue music, and he said looking backwards he had felt some anxiety, but really he attributed, once he had made the decision to pursue something different, he felt the anxiety was just like I forgot how he worded it. It was really cool, but he says the anxiety was just because he wasn't going the path that he was meant to go down.
Yeah.
Did you, like, in retrospect, did you feel any sort of that?
Did you have any general anxiety before you went into music, like I'm in the wrong life type of feelings?
Oh yeah, for sure. In music too. In oftentimes I'll think like, what would be happening right now if I was just doing programming? It's like I'd probably be taking vacations. I'd probably have enough money to go out with my friends every weekend. All this other stuff that sounds like pretty nice. And so that comes up a lot. I have to think to myself, okay, would it be worth it for me to spend the next 15 years of my life building a career in something like programming? And the answer is hell no. Would it be worth it to be building something in music like I am right now for the next 15 years? Absolutely. Like, I can dedicate my life to it, and at the end look back on it and say, like, yes, this was not just like work for the sake of work. This was work for the sake of like meaning and purpose, but also difficulty and all of the other stuff that comes with it. And I couldn't do that with computer science. And for me, work has, like, the work I do has to be part of like the big picture for me. And for a lot of people, it's like you work so that you can do other things, and that's totally fine. For me, I'm more of a workaholic, I guess, and so I'm going to work a lot. And so it has to be something like music where I can be okay looking back and spending all that time on it and feel like it's worth it. Whereas if it was for programming, I'd feel like I was wasting my life, even though I like programming. But I just wouldn't want to spend every waking hour doing that.
Yeah, I think it's so funny that, some people hold the perception, I definitely don't feel this way, but some people might hold the perception that being an artist is like free and fun and you do whatever, and like really when it comes down to it, like it seems like a very high level of discipline that you have to hold yourself to in order to keep yourself within that realm. So, it's incredible to see you continue with that discipline, and the cliche being, discipline is like the highest form of self-love, but you really need to have a high level of dedication and discipline to continue to be an artist, it seems like.
I haven't heard of that wording before. Discipline's the highest version of self-love.
Yeah, I picked it up somewhere. I
like that. That's cool.
It is cool, isn't it?
Picked it up somewhere. I do this thing where I rip shit off of people and I forget where it came from. So.
Yeah. Dr. Seuss, I think. Dr. Seuss wrote that one. He's quite a deep fellow, actually. That's good.
Can I follow a squirrel here about Dr. Seuss, though?
Sure. Yeah.
Supposedly, Dr. Seuss was like this reclusive, depressive type.
Really?
Yeah. People think of him as like, well, obviously through his work, you think he's like this cheery, like friendly, kid-loving person. Not the case. He's like suicidal,
so
pulled
curious.
himself up and just wrote these really happy kid stories. I guess they're not all happy. Like they're genuine stories, but like some of the artistry.
The universe he goes within is very different.
And
and a lot of happy endings and stuff.
Yeah. Maybe that's what he wanted to do, though.
Yeah.
Just like this space where you can create that perfect world, or that world where you can convey his message to the next generation of people that would actually make the differences that you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
Making bad assumptions, but that's cool enough.
Do you ever think of that with your work when you put something out into the universe? Like, what's the chance that this has an impact on somebody tomorrow, a couple weeks from now, a couple of years from now, like a generation from now? Especially with the digital age, like once you put something out there, it's going to be there for. I mean, I don't know how human society is going to evolve, but it'll be there for a while.
I always think about that.
Yeah.
And I try not to because for a couple of reasons, I try not to. One is because most of the time someone is moved by a certain piece of art or music or whatever it is. The person moved by it generally won't ever go and tell the person that made it, like, you changed my life.
Yeah.
Or, like, this song got me through this time. And just have faith that if it was emotional for me, and if it helped me through something, that it has the potential to help other people. And I try to rely on just that thought alone. Of course, I am human, and I crave the validation from my listeners that any musician would. And so I like it when people tell me, and when people do tell me, it's like, oh my gosh, like it is real. People are affected by it. But yeah, I think about it a lot.
It's an interesting time to be an artist. All your artwork's just it's archived online. We'll see your progression. It's really interesting that you can watch how you change over time. So like you said, something you think about every day because it's a little scary because you can see stuff you said 5 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, and like all of the statistics are everywhere. Like you can see how many people listen to me every month on Spotify. You can see how many people are subscribed on YouTube, like how many views things have, how many likes things have. All that is it is an unnecessary noise.
Necessary.
It's interesting.
It sucks.
Good perspective. Unnecessary noise.
Yeah, and most creative people almost need those things to connect with their listeners, because how else are you going to monetize it? Like, you need to have fans that want to support you. And how do you connect with them if none of your stuff is if you're not findable online? But at the same time, all of that stuff hurts a lot and causes depression for a lot of creatives and all that. Like, if you put out something that means a lot on an Instagram post and you're spilling your heart out, and no one sees it, no one comments on it, it's like, oh shit, should I be talking about this stuff? Does anyone care? Should I care if anyone cares? And then you post a picture of yourself just sitting on the side of a road and put nothing in the caption, and it gets like 300 likes. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah, like solid filter.
It makes no, yeah,
Thanks,
exactly.
bro.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I think you tapped at a really interesting problem, and what you identified that was really also interesting word of the night is that feeling of where the artist is expressing themselves, but then they feel that rejection almost. They feel like they're not validated for expressing who they are because you're coming at a vulnerable space, almost opening yourself up, and then it's an empty room for like two people snapping.
Yeah.
Nothing really going on there. But the really interesting point you identified, I think, is how do you leverage creatives better to the point where they match with their audiences, which is happening on Discord and other areas, kind of, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
There's so many creative people out there that are singing their souls out to get recognized. It falls on deaf ears.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe potentially that's where some of the corruption in the music industry happens too. There's people who are true artists get silenced. They don't know the right people. Get people not get leverage and attention. There's all the power dynamics in that space, which is like totally runs contrary to artwork that's like boundless and the manifestation of love and connection, and we're delivering it into the culture. Sometimes in a system that's flawed potentially.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like that, there's a lot of like big like artists are not the people who are even writing the music or producing the music. It's like they are an industry. They are a cog in the business, and they are used as like a figurehead, and it's not their art, and it's weird. It's like because like just an example, and I'm not hating on this artist at all. I personally love her music. I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan too. Like I love pop music so much. But like I read Olivia Rodrigo's Spotify bio, and it was like, hey, just like an 18-year-old making music in my garage with my friends. And I was like, that's not true. Like, I'm looking at the credits in the songs. There's like 8 songwriters, 4 different producers, like editors, A&R people. Like, this music was made with a massive industry team and had like $500 million of promotion behind it. Like, but the whole idea is for it to be this image of this young girl who has this incredible talent, and don't get me wrong, she's an amazing singer, great artist, whatever, but there are so many of hers who don't have that and who are amazing artists and who are just making music in their garage with their friends, and they don't get that, and it's just the way it is. Like it just is. It takes a lot of money in music.
Yeah, a lot of resources.
A lot of the time. Yeah.
Again, this might be slipping back into the segment.
Things we don't know how to talk about.
Sure. Sorry,
Let's open it back up.
Well, I think you're qualified to talk about it, but what I'm about to ask, I meant if you're qualified. Like, how do you go about correcting that, or is that the ageless question of artists? You know, is that correctable? Giving due credit to artists that are genuine, and or is that just the industry? It's an industry, and the people that have the right connections and wherewithal to make something popular, they're the ones that get the recognition.
That's the leverage, or how the platforms access, and maybe there's another way of wording that can be the platform now.
Yeah, definitely a mix. I mean, because there are very genuine artists who make it. Like a lot of really great artists are really authentic and did not start off with like a huge boost from the industry. And a lot of those people had been making music for years, and that just goes back to if you love it, you're going to do it for a very long time, like probably your whole life, and eventually there's not a terrible chance that some good things will happen along the way. So I think it's both.
Yeah. Well, Alex, what are you looking forward to in the immediate future? I know you said you have some tracks on the way. Can you give us information on those?
Yes, I have two tracks coming out in the next 2 months. They're both with artists who are more recognized in the EDM scene as vocalists. So I'm really excited to work with both of them. They're both incredibly talented. They sent over awesome vocals. The next song is going to be a much more clubby, like big bass line, big kick kind of song. So way different than By the Sea. And the one after that is going to be a future bass track. So I do know that subgenre. I can recognize that. So both those will be coming out this fall. Don't know what else to say about those. Yeah, I hope they're going to be good. I'm excited for those.
Geeked about that future bass track, though. I'm a future bass head. I didn't know.
Really? Okay, sweet.
Yeah, I just like gravitated towards those artists, and then somebody pointed out, they're like, "Oh, that's all future bass." I'm like, "Oh, fuck, okay, that makes sense."
Yeah. It took me a while to figure out what the genre was. Like, I was definitely listening to it before I knew what it was.
Yeah.
Cool genre.
Yeah, it is. I think it's fun. I mean, I don't know. Again, with the genres, it's so fluid. It's like what but I think it's a fun genre.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as like life stuff, what do you have coming up for yourself as a person?
As far as the eye can see, it's just kind of running this, in computer science terms, running the algorithm. I'm just going to keep putting songs out every month forever, probably, until I die. I got some big candle. Well, okay, so one cool thing is I'm not a big enough artist to get into music festivals to play music festivals, but I am able to get into music festivals to sell candles. So
Nice.
I'm going up to a folk music festival in Massachusetts next week. And then there's a couple of EDM festivals on the East Coast that I was invited to sell candles at. So going to try my hand at networking in those places. We'll see how that goes, but really big crowds at a lot of these places. There's one festival that I'm doing that is expected to have between 100 and 150,000 people. So gonna make a lot of candles and hope to sell enough to hire some more singers for my songs.
Yes, that's so rad. Just infiltrate,
Yep.
Get your feet in there.
Got a visitor.
Kitty make an appearance.
Yep.
What's Kitty's name?
Kitty's name is Nani. Her full name is Rhiannon, named after the Fleetwood Mac song.
Yes. Music, everything.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
The tail has to be touching you. I recognize
Nope,
that.
goodness. Okay, hopefully she didn't, yeah.
My human. Well, Alex, I know it is quite a bit later where you're at. So I want to say thank you so much for allowing this conversation to happen. I'm so glad to see that you're doing what you love, and it's really inspiring to hear from people that are doing that. So again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I expect to see huge things from you, but the work and dedication you're putting in is making that happen. So congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the kind words, the conversation, bringing me on in the first place. Loved the episodes that I had listened to before, so I'm excited to listen to more of y'all's episodes and honored to be a part of it.
Cool, man. And
before we get you off,
yes.
too, where can we follow you? Where can people find you? What's the best way to connect with you?
Number one way, go follow me on Spotify, Alex Bochel. Search my name. If you just Google my name, everything comes up. I'm the only Alex Bochel that pretty much exists. So
cool.
But every platform.
Every platform. And then we will take you up, if you don't mind, on that follow-up interview in a couple of years so we can drink some coffee in the morning.
Let's do it. Really caffeinated. Maybe in a couple of years I'll have enough money to fly out to Arizona. We could do something in person.
Oh, dude, that would be incredible. Yeah, that would be cool. All right, Alex. We'll let you get some rest. Thank you again. Appreciate you. Well, cheers to end it. And that concludes our episode with Alex Bochel. Next week, we sit down and share a cup of coffee with a production and DJ group from Scottsdale, Arizona that is currently going through transformation process. They were previously called Storytime, and they are now going by Dreamcode. And we get into a lot of why that is and what they're doing to make that transformation. But until then, stay caffeinated.